So, hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Tracy Stein. Happy New Year. It's 2023. And I'm so happy to be with you as always. And I think the theme of certainly this podcast and maybe broadly the next several will be, who do you want to be in 2023? Not only because it rhymes and it sounds catchy, because it does, but because it's an important question. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I'm going to kind of set the mood here. You can hear me rustling for a match. For those of you just listening on audio on one of your favorite streaming apps, you can hear me lighting a match. I'm finally using my Neumann microphone, so it picks up everything. I'm lighting a candle to kind of set the mood, right? Because let's make this a bit of a sacred space. Thank you, Camille, for my beautiful beeswax candle. But yeah, as you can see, if you're watching on video, I'm dressed uber casually today because I'm going to go exercise in a little bit, because that's part of who I want to be in 2023, a healthier and more relaxed version of me. But it's a really important question, right? And I know everybody is bombarded with all of this stuff about New Year's resolutions and, the typical, all right, what do you want this year to be like? And most of us make a big list of things we want to change. Sometimes the list is super big and the items on it are also super big. And it's not that that's bad, but as you probably know, it's a lot easier to change one thing at a time and to change things incrementally, right? To set small, achievable goals. We know that. But I want to get kind of deeper than that today. So if you have a moment and you have some paper with you and a pen or pencil, that's great. Or you can just kind of think about some of the things I'm going to talk about today, and then maybe take a listen later on, or just jot some things down later, or just kind of hold in your mind the images of what you would like to be different. Really, this whole podcast is about that too, right? Because every guest that I have had on, I really try to bring something interesting and meaningful and enjoyable to listen to. But also, most of the content here is really about, again, as I've said, how to help you feel better, do better, live better. And in order to do that, we kind of have to have a sense of what's working well, right? And have gratitude for those things about us and about our lives that are really good, even if we want to change them, right? There's this myth that we have to wait, that joy is in the future. I will be happy, I will be joyful, I will be grateful when. And honestly, we can spend our whole lives waiting for that moment and never really realizing that there are millions of moments that we can be grateful for all along the journey. We'll honestly be a whole lot happier if we allow ourselves to tune into those. But, in terms of the doing better and living better and making changes that we want to make, we have to kind of know what we would want to be different. And I'm going to go again deeper than I maybe have gone into the whole behavior change realm today, because I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been listening to a lot more of Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Many of you, if you enjoy this podcast, I'm sure you've probably heard of him. He's a best-selling author. That doesn't even really capture it. But somebody whose work is really all about personal transformation. Same with many of the guests that you've heard here. But one of the things Dr. Joe says that is really interesting and provocative and important for us to give some thought to is, he says that really to make lasting, meaningful change in our minds and our emotions and in our bodies even, we have to kind of change our personalities. And that's kind of an interesting thing for psychologists like myself to think about, because we're trained that, you know, kind of early on, your personality pretty much forms. And then you also have your thoughts and your emotions and your reactions to things. And we can work on those. We can improve our coping skills, and we can learn to reframe things cognitively. And that can help quite a lot in terms of mood management and so forth. But that our personalities are essentially kind of static, not static, but kind of the foundation of who we are. So it's pretty radical to think about, well, can we change something at a more deep and fundamental level about who we are? And so I want to get into that a little bit, right? And, if I were doing a workshop with you, we would have time for going within and guided imagery and self-hypnosis techniques and some journaling to really get deep into what is it we want to be different? What is it that's working well? If there's something we want to change, how would that look? And so, as I'm talking about that today, I want you to give yourself permission to just allow, rather than forcing, oh, what's the answer to these questions? Allow yourself to think about, okay, what is working well for me? And again, you could write this down if you want, or you could listen later, or just kind of allow these images to come to mind in whatever way your very wise, conscious and subconscious parts of you wants to deliver that information. What strengths do you have that maybe you'd even like to develop further? What things, not only within you, but in your external world, would you really like to be different? And with that last question, I really want you to think about not only the stuff that's within you, like, okay, I'd like to get more exercise. And again, I'm in my exercise wear now, so I can go do that after the podcast. Yay. Small steps are how we traverse any distance, small or great. But I want you to think about things that are maybe a little bit bigger, right? And I want to offer something that's going to sound very contradictory. One, that there's way more in the realm of possibility than you may have thought of that you could change, right? People do it. But there is also a limited amount of time in any given day. If we're thinking about time in the more kind of linear, mundane, kind of finite way of thinking, that kind of is really important in our day-to-day lives. What would you want to do with that time? And just to help you get clearer on how you would like your life to change, the stuff you do, the stuff in your environment, it might be where you live, it might be where you work, it might be in your relationships with other key people in your life, in your family, in your friendships, and so forth. Would you want to be more social? Would you want to have less time being social and more time just for you? A good way of having more clarity about who you would want to be and what you would like your life to look like is to imagine yourself in the future, right? And imagine that self giving you advice now. It's a guided imagery technique, it's a hypnotic technique, and we're not going into formal hypnosis now, but when you allow yourself now or later on when you have more time to just kind of sit quietly, when you imagine yourself 10 years in the future or 20 years in the future or 5 years in the future, it really doesn't matter. Just pick a time. And you imagine the you that has so much more experience and has solved the challenges and problems that you're facing now, right? Because it's done. You figured it out. You've gotten through whatever feels difficult or easy or wonderful or challenging now. So you now know even more in that future time. And you've developed more skills along the way. We're always developing skills, even when we don't think we are. We are learning to navigate things. And then over time and with practice, we navigate them even better. But what advice would that self give to the you are now, especially with things that feel difficult or stressful? That advice is priceless. And again, that could be in any or many areas of your life that advice would come in handy. So, for example, honestly, for many people, we spend a ton of time with people that we might care about, but we spend time with people that might just feel kind of draining. Or maybe we're giving out more than we're getting back routinely. That's a really hard one, but it comes up so often. I know that a lot of my listeners and the people who have tended to buy my audio programs and listen to them have told me, because I get mail from you all and I really enjoy it, or I see some of your posts on social media and I really enjoy your feedback. But a lot of really good and really nice people struggle with saying no, or struggle with setting limits, or feel like they keep attracting people that kind of seem different on the surface, but have something in common. And that thing in common might be that the relationships with them are just not reciprocal. They're not even. And I don't mean in this kind of tit for tat, if I do this, you have to do that immediately and so forth. But you know what I mean. The friends that are really in touch when they might need something and then not so in touch when they don't, even if you might need support, right? So that might be something you want to change. Or it may be that you have been going to the same job and you dream about doing something different or learning something different. And it's so frightening to think about making a change, right? Or you might say, oh, I'm too old to do this, or I should have done this years ago. So maybe that's something that you would want to ask your future self about. Oh, how could I be happier at work? Or how could I find friendships where they feel really reciprocal and mutually supportive and enlivening rather than draining, generally? Who do you want to be in 2023 and going forward? And what would you have to change about you, right? And as hard as it is to change things about ourselves, that's actually also the easiest thing to change, in the sense that we only can make decisions for ourselves, really, as adults. We only can really examine what we want to be different for ourselves. You know how hard it is to get someone else to change when you think that they could be feeling and doing better, but they're just not there, and that's okay. So one of the things you might want to change is just kind of surrendering. I don't have to take care of everybody else's stuff all the time. I couldn't anyway, even if I wanted to, even if we have both thought that that was possible even. Maybe it's something as simple as taking care of your physical body, or taking care of your finances. These are all things that I know can bring up a lot of stress. Please know I get that. And here's where the personality thing comes in. And by the way, when I say, making a shift in your personality, what I don't mean is putting on this kind of false self or pretending to be someone that you're not. I know that there can be some value in the moment, fake it till you make it, stepping into a situation and stepping into the idea of being more confident that you might than you might normally feel you would be in terms of like public speaking or presenting and things like that. And that's completely great and very useful. But I mean, you don't have to try to be someone that feels so not you. That's not what I mean. But I'll give you an example. So, we had our last session of our Manifesting Healthy Weight workshop last night. It was great. What an incredible group of people. Wonderful to get to know everybody and wonderful to kind of get to know ourselves and transform at a deeper level. And really, anytime we want to manifest healthy change, it really does work better if we do it at multiple levels, not just changing the behaviors and the way we think about things, but really taking a deeper look. But it was interesting talking about kind of where so many of us get the ideas about who we are and who we want to be, and the way we think about things and the way we think about what's possible for ourselves. And, just to give you an example, just in terms of what makes healthy eating, right? Well, that is shaped really early on by people who might mean well, but might give us information like, you got to clean your plate. And it can take us a while to realize that it's okay to stop eating when we're full. Or conversely, it's okay to eat enough when we're hungry rather than try to literally fit into somebody else's idea of good enough or okay. Right. But we could translate that into many things, not just eating and weight and so forth. What are you entitled to? And I'm asking that because so often when we want to make change, a part of us, the conscious part, is like, yes, I really want to be happier. I want to be healthier. I want to do this or that. And another part of us that might be actually more active below the surface of conscious awareness will say, you can't do that. Or people from our family don't do XYZ. Or who do you think you are? Or it might be something else entirely, right? And it does take some time to sit with these questions, but what are the kind of more quiet or maybe not so quiet voices that you hear that can get in the way when you want to make a change that's important for you? A change in a relationship, a change in the way you take care of yourself, a change in what you think is possible for you, right? And I want you to consider this as you pay attention to the mental noise, that's what I'm going to call it, that gets in the way. We would call it an automatic thought in cognitive behavioral therapy. Oh, you're not going to be able to do public speaking. I'm making that up. And the core belief, the deeper belief might be, what you have to say isn't valuable. Right? And you can see how something like that would get in the way of you maybe taking a job where you have to do a lot of speaking, or voicing what your needs are, or sharing your opinion and knowing that it has value purely because you're a human being with inherent worth. So as you reflect on what you want for yourself, pay attention over the coming days and weeks. And I would say, write it down, right? We kind of take some of the scariness and the power out of some of these automatic thoughts and these kind of self-sabotaging core beliefs or disempowering core beliefs when we write them down. We see that the words on the page and we can say, oh, is that true? And then as you do that and say, okay, what do I want? What would I need to do differently? What gets in the way? What are the kind of thoughts and beliefs that get in the way of me doing things that would make me happier and healthier and more easily step into the person I'd really like to be in the life I'd really like to have, whatever that is. Ask yourself from a place of compassion, right? And that's where our meditative practices can be really helpful. Whose stuff is this? Whose words are these? Now, some of these things you're going to laugh and say, I know exactly who this comes from because so and so in my life used to always say this or still does, right? Or used to say some version of this. But sometimes it might surprise you. And this is where the personality part comes in, because we can become so identified with our beliefs, with our quote rules for ourselves and other people, that we assume it's part of the fabric of who we are. Right? Part of our personality. This is just who I am. How many times have you said that to someone else or to yourself? Or maybe someone in your life who's pretty challenging when you've said, yeah, I don't like this, or this doesn't feel good when we interact this way. And they say, this is just who I am, like love it or leave it. But what if that's more mutable, more changeable? I'm not saying it's easy. It's going to be a process, but just realizing what stuff of your stuff is really somebody else's stuff. And what if you could use the power of your wonderful and incredible mind and imagine, and I'm using my hands if you see me on video, but taking that thing, that belief, as if it's something concrete, an object. You can picture it as like a boulder that's been weighing you down. Oh, you can hear my stomach growling because I haven't eaten yet. Or some other weighty thing, or just something that, whatever it is, it could just be like a gift you don't want. Somebody was trying to help you with their pearls of wisdom. You could see pearls, I don't know. But imagine taking that thing and putting it on a shelf. It could be a shelf in your mind. It could be a shelf in your closet. It could be just handing it back to the universe and letting it be transformed, right? We don't have to do something with somebody else's stuff beyond just setting it aside, or even imagine handing it back to them lovingly. Because one way of thinking about things is, for the most part, all of us are kind of doing the best we know how to do in the moment. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's less great. And so I want you to try and be forgiving of yourself when you are the person imparting your pearls of wisdom that may not be the right fit for somebody else in your life. We've all done it. But getting back to who do you want to be and what would you need to change and how would you get there? The first step truly is just allowing yourself space, creating kind of a loving and safe and forgiving space for you to take a look at. All right. Because if you could do anything, right? People do all kinds of stuff that no one expects them to do. I mean that in the best possible way, right? People surprise themselves all the time. And it can be with something small, or it could be on a larger scale. People do the impossible. And once they do, it's possible. And if you imagine now your future self at whatever point in time in the future you wanted to imagine it again, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, if you imagine that self has done the things that a part of you has really wanted to do and maybe felt afraid to do or too tired to do or like it's too late to do, imagine that future you having done those things you really want to do being what? How would that person feel? How would that you feel? Joyful, grateful. empowered, right? Have you ever had something great happen and you started just like kind of laughing and crying at the same time because you were in this incredibly wonderful, almost disbelief, and you felt like you needed to pinch yourself because, oh, how did this wonderful thing happen? Miracles happen every day. Wonderful things happen every day. So imagine now, as you meet that future self, that is the feeling that they have. How do they carry themselves? How do they walk? What are they wearing? What's the expression on their face? Who do they spend time with? How do they spend their time? Imagine stepping into that experience. And given that, what advice would they give you now? Or what words of encouragement would they have for you? And it might be something as simple and beautiful as, I love you. We're in this together. You can do it. We make it happen. So when you get some time to sit down and give more thought to that, really, I would actually sit down many times. You might even want to take a month. I know it sounds like a long time, but you know what? It's a great way to make lasting change. Because the more you do this exercise, writing these things down, visiting with this you that has already done the things that you really want to do, and you might actually be a little afraid of or a lot afraid of doing now, the more real those feelings will be for you in the now. You don't have to wait to the future to feel really good in the now. And just bringing it back again to what Dr. Joe Dispenza has said. But again, make this your thing. Find the way of thinking about this that works the best for you. But what Dr. Joe has said in his books and in his talks is, and he's not the only person to say it, but I'm using him because I'm using him as an example because so many people are familiar with his work. As you create and experience those feelings in the now, those feelings that you imagine and know that you would have and you will have in the future, you actually increase the likelihood of attracting those experiences to you. You're sending out a different signal to the universe, right? That's a more kind of esoteric way and metaphysical way of thinking about it. But he's really talking about manifesting. And actually, I think it works. Sorry, there's my stomach growling again. I should not record so early, right? But think about it. And even if you just want to think about it from a psychological perspective, right? We can do that too. It's still worthwhile. It's quite potent on its own. Once you have had the experience internally in your mind, in your body, in your emotional state of doing those things that you really want to do that will bring you joy, you actually are shifting your personality. You are changing your expectations. You are enhancing your confidence, and you are actually more likely to go start doing those things that you really have been wanting to do. And you're going to have a much easier time shedding all that kind of, what, that's been kind of holding you back and you don't need. And probably a lot of it wasn't even yours to begin with, right? So imagine, again, putting that crap on a shelf, letting it go. So I hope this is something that has started, the wheels turning, or just kept them turning, or is in line with what you were kind of thinking of anyway. But again, you can do it. And you don't, it doesn't have to be this thing that feels scary or overwhelming. As I say, not infrequently, how do you run a marathon versus how do you walk a block? Step by step, right? You can do that. So I'll leave you with those questions, and I want to hear from you what you think and what you've discovered about yourself and what you'd like to hear more of. And if you want more content like this or guided meditations that go a little more in depth, you can find my audio programs, my meditations and self-hypnosis and guided imagery now all at hayhouse.com and on the Hay House Empower You Unlimited audio app. Yay. So great. Feel so privileged to be a part of that community. I'll also have some new guided imagery coming out with HemiSync in the next few months. So I hope you check that out as well. And until next time, I just wish you all the very best and that you treat yourself with all the love and kindness that you deserve. See you next time. This has been another episode of Unpacking Possibility with Dr. Tracy Stein. If you like the episode, please remember to like, share, and follow. It really helps me to continue bringing more great content to you. And of course, you can catch the podcast on all of your favorite streaming services, including Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and elsewhere.